Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome today to my review of the Phoibos Great Wall, the Great Wall of Phoibos. I've really been looking forward to this watch coming in, not necessarily because of the watch itself, but because I get to go on a trip down memory lane. Back in August 2009, a few friends, one of whom was 5 months pregnant at the time, and I went on a trip to China. First stop was Hong Kong, and then we headed north to Beijing. Now, my partner at the time, who's now my ex-partner, she was a great traveller. She used to love doing the research, and she researched that there were 3 spots near Beijing where you could visit the Great Wall. 2 of them were always covered in tourists. The 3rd was always just about empty. So that's where we headed. And after bribing our way past a few old Chinese grannies, we ended up on this enormous stretch of the wall all to ourselves. The wall looked like it went all the way to the horizon because it pretty much did go all the way to the horizon. There wasn't a cloud in the sky. It was one of the most memorable travel experiences of my life. But this has got bugger all to do with watches, Jody. Thanks for indulging me. Let's flip the camera and get on with the review. Oh, the memories. You can tell that was a few years ago because I still had a number of brown hairs on my head. Now, we got to the end of our walk that day and realised that the old Chinese grannies weren't necessarily just trying to extort us for a few dollars. We came across this rather large sign saying that the section of the wall that we had just traversed was in fact closed for reconstruction. Now, if you're wondering, the watch on my wrist that day and for most of the naughties was my beloved Omega Seamaster Pre-Bond 200, which I still have. So back to the watch. The intro wasn't entirely unrelated, by the way. I'll pop some of those pictures back up later on and you'll see where Phoibos got the styling cues for this great wall. So all the usual good stuff. We're going to do dimensions and specifications. This watch contains an ETA 2824, so I'll pop that on the time grapher. 1 strap, 1 bracelet, so I'll show you on both of those. And in a channel first, some big news today. We're going to be going macro. I just bought a macro lens. Big thank you to everyone who supports the channel on Patreon. I've been on Patreon for a year or so and I said that any funds I received through that channel would be put back into this channel, helping improve the overall product. So I bought a time grapher a couple of months ago and there was enough money in the kitty for me to invest in a macro lens. If you're feeling generous, I'll leave a link to the channel's Patreon in the description of the video. A couple of teaser shots here for you. I'll do a macro montage a little later on. Full disclosure, Phoibos sent me this watch for free, as they have done with most, if not all, of the others that I've reviewed from them. They send a whole bunch of watches out to a whole bunch of YouTubers every time they have a new model. So as always, don't just take my word for it. If you're interested in this one, make sure you check out these other reviews. Now, I've been making watch videos on YouTube for just about as long as Phoibos have been making watches. And it has been great to see the evolution of the company over the last couple of years. They started out making pretty much straight up Rolex Submariner homages, first in quartz, then in automatic. Then they started to venture into designs that I wouldn't necessarily call original. I mean, there's a chunk of Panerai in a couple of these and a big slice of 50 fathoms in that one. You could say that this Phoibos Great Wall is their first properly original design and one they've been keen to make. Now, I've been chatting to Ethan, the owner of Phoibos Watches, on and off for the last couple of years, and he was very proud of this design. I did ask him at the time that he first sent me the renders who he actually thought was going to buy this watch, given that China's political relationship with the rest of the world is fraught at points. But I don't think he's all that concerned. He just wanted to make an original watch celebrating his and his company's Chinese heritage and incorporating some of the features of the Great Wall of China into its design. And I don't think I need to tell you, he's clearly been successful in that. So 42mm in diameter, just under 15mm thick, but that does include a piece of double dome sapphire crystal and a sapphire crystal bezel insert today. 47 and a bit lug tip to lug tip, so it actually wears rather well considering it's a 42. Now 22mm lug width, no taper on this bracelet, so 22 all the way, back up to 24 at the clasp, so it is a substantial clasp. Sized up for me, I've got a 7-inch wrist. This one comes in at 187 grams. Plenty of spare links. I would say up to 8.5-inch wrist. I'll give you the weight of it on the rubber strap a bit later on in the video. So 316L stainless steel case, crown, bezel and full 316L stainless steel bracelet. Now we've got solid end links, we've also got solid links with a kind of hex bolt system, like a little mini Allen key. I'll show you that in operation also later in the video. Big chunky clasp, proper scissor clasp, and it has a diver's extension built into it also. All brushed finish throughout this watch. The only touch of polish there is on that tiny little helium escape valve next to the 9 o'clock index, but I'll kind of forgive it that. I really do like a brush finish. Everything very nicely clean, very crisply defined, good machining on the bezel, and an interesting case shape. You know, it's not just a straightforward, they've put a couple of divots there, adding a bit of visual interest, and a nicely integrated bracelet end length. The whole watch does feel very, very solid indeed. Now you can begin to see where some of these Great Wall references are coming in with this bezel. Those grippy bits on the edge, very much designed like the parapets on top of the Great Wall itself from one of the photos that I showed you earlier on. And the action of said bezel is very, very good indeed. Positive, precise, no backplay at all, and a satisfying little noise when you flick it forward. 120 click, unidirectional, as you'd expect from a dive watch. So zooming in on the dial, you can see more of these Great Wall references. The dial itself is textured with a brick pattern. So we have got the Phoibos King Octopus there underneath the big shield shape index at 12, 500 meters because we have 500 meters of water resistance today, and automatic. That's all printed on. The rest of the dial, as you can see, they're textured with that brick pattern. A few different colorways. I chose one of the milder ones, mostly this black and pale blue color. I think it probably takes the watch down a notch or two. It is a full-on design today, so I thought this color scheme helped bring it back down to earth a little bit. Not least of which we have these big shield-shaped indexes, again at the 12, the 3, the 9, and a truncated one down there at the 6. Date frame integrated, just a clean cutout there, just above the 6 o'clock, and the other batons, well, I would say they were kind of sword slash shield, again evoking images of the Great Wall of China and its role in protecting the various dynasties over the years. Now the handset, again colour matched to the rest of the watch, this one kind of pale grey and pale blue. Sword hands, I would say, and we've got a nice arrowhead second hand there, all with plenty of lume on them. There is a chapter ring, there is a Rehaut chapter ring there, just at the edges of the dial with cutouts for those indexes. Minute track in pale blue to match the hands, match the indexes, and match the 115 portion of the sapphire bezel insert. So sapphire bezel insert and double dome crystal. Again, very nice for a watch at $500. You don't see an awful lot of sapphire bezel inserts, but I do appreciate them when I get them. And the lume today, I must admit, is phenomenal. I'll pop up the lume video now. I reckon maybe top 5 of the watches that I've reviewed on the channel. Definitely up there with the Helm Vanuatu and Kuraburi and the Zelos Bronze Mako, which I had for a while last year. X1 grade C3 Superluminova, and plenty of it pumped into those hands, the indices and that sapphire bezel insert. This one hangs on and on and on. Definitely one of the best watches for lume that I've reviewed so far. And the bracelet is every bit as chunky as the head of the watch. Again, all brush finish here, and that kind of wall theme in keeping with the rest of the overall design is replicated. Now, not screw links, well, I guess they're screw links, but there is a kind of hex head. I'll show you how you do that in a little insert here. Phoibos actually delayed the production, or the distribution at least, of this watch until they had tools to supply with each of the watches. So you get 2 of these little tools very specific to this watch. I had no problem sizing this one at all. You're not going to size a watch all that often. There are a couple of micro adjusts available on the bracelet as well, and obviously you can use this diver's extension to give you a bit more room over the course of a day. So an interesting choice, tying in with the overall theme. Good to see Phoibos doing something different with their bracelet. Popping a link to show you the case back, and that Great Wall theme continues there. Looks just like it did when I visited in 2009. So Phoibos, Great Wall, ETA 2824, 2 sapphire crystal, 500 meters of water resistance, and a helium escape valve. The usual selection of features on the back. So this one does contain an ETA 2824, Phoibos' first watch to feature a high beat Swiss automatic. So it's a 4 Hz movement, 28,800 vibrations per hour, 25 joules, hacked and hand winds. Now the stated tolerances on these are -15 to +15 per day, adjusted to 2 positions out of the factory. Let's pop this one on the time grapher. Yeah, so no complaints about this one. Now, Swatch Group restricted availability of these ETAs a few years ago, but if a Chinese micro brand like Phoibos can get their hands on them in sufficient numbers, they must have had a reversal of that decision, which I think is good news for all. Very reliable, robust workhorse of a movement, but you will pay a few dollars to service it when that time comes. So let's get it on wrist then. 7-inch wrist as mentioned. And for a big chunky watch, I must say it wears rather well. A lot of the weight is in that big chunky bracelet. So as a consequence, it's quite well balanced. There is some curvature to the lugs, as you can see. 48mm lug tip to lug tip, or just under, isn't particularly long. So it is going to suit guys who have smaller wrists, but do still quite like to wear a larger style of watch. Legibility is not going to be an issue for you either, with big broad hands, I think nicely proportioned, pushing out just as far as you want them to. Huge indices though, those shields really do dominate the dial today. And when you take it outside, there's plenty of AR coating on the underside of that double dome sapphire crystal, so again, legibility isn't affected by some sunlight. Nice bit of purple AR hue when you get it into some natural light as well that isn't necessarily as noticeable under the studio lights. All brush finish looks good to me. I'm not a massive fan of polished surfaces on watches, and as a dive watch I always prefer a more tooly look overall to something that's a little bit more blinged up. And the fitted rubber strap is excellent. When I reviewed the Sea Nymph, their first ladies watch a couple of months ago, I said that I hoped they would start including these fitted end link rubber straps with all of their future releases, and this one is fantastic. Completely changes the character of the watch, takes it down from 187 to 117 grams, much more wearable as a consequence if you don't like your watches really big and heavy. Phoibos branded buckle there also, which is nice to see, but a very comfortable watch. Also smooths out some of the sharp edges on the case, which I'll talk about later. So it's time for the channel's first ever macro montage. Now, I'll let you into a secret. This Phoibos comes out of the same factory as a whole bunch of the other top micro brand watches that I have reviewed so far, and I'm consistently commenting that the machining on the cases is top notch. No complaints there when you get it under a macro lens. No complaints about the dial either, it's all very nicely done. Crisp, clean, cut out date window, and that little Phoibos octopus logo. How much detail has gone into that on the crown there. Just lovely. Same with the case back again, nice deep etched case back. My one complaint though is that minute hand. This one shouldn't have passed QC. There's quite an obvious little cut there, it hasn't been cleanly cut. Now I can see it with the naked eye, it's all the more noticeable with a macro lens. But this has been a lot of fun. I look forward to using it in future videos as well. So clearly we're into the moans and niggles section of the review then, and that imperfectly cut minute hand is the first of them. 30-day money back guarantee with Phoibos, so if you're not completely happy with your purchase, I would suggest giving it a good look over when you get it out of the box. Before you size up the bracelet or anything, make sure you're entirely happy with the watch that you have received. My next complaint, I alluded to it, a lot of sharp surfaces, a lot of sharp angles, bit of a sharp edge on the bracelet, sharp edge on the case, and sharp edge on those kind of parapet turret style bezel edges also. Just something to bear in mind. You may well end up scraping this watch off of surfaces in a way that you wouldn't do a watch that had a more smooth and rounded edges to it. I guess that comes as part of the design. And then there's the design. They certainly cranked up the originality with this one, as mentioned earlier. I think Phoibos knew what they were doing. This is for them. It's not necessarily going to appeal to everyone. Now, I'm a bit of a Sinophile. I have studied Chinese history. I've been to China. So this watch evokes evokes a different set of emotions and connotations with me. Not everyone is going to want a watch that's so overtly reminiscent of one of China's great historical cultural artifacts. But maybe if you're a member of the Chinese diaspora, you're in North America somewhere, or you're in the UK, and you want to buy a watch that reminds you of your mother country, then this is the one for you. Only time will tell if this watch sells in big numbers. I'm not sure that Phoibos will be all that bothered, even if it doesn't. So there you have it, the Great Wall of Phoibos. Certainly built like a piece of the Great Wall of China. Now, as noted in the video, I expressed my concerns to the owners of Phoibos about who would actually buy this watch. Is it for Chinese Americans, Chinese Canadians, the Chinese diaspora? There are 50 million of them after all. That's a fair few potential customers. Or is it for all of you who've been crying out for an ETA 2824 powered pseudo dive watch that's got some heavy Chinese stylistic influences? Yes. Time will tell whether this one sells in great numbers or whether it's more of a pet project for the owners of Phoibos, which is fine, let's be honest. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one.